He said it like a dare, low and casual. Pretend to be her. Just for tonight. I laughed. But my skin flushed before the sound even left my lips. It started at a dinner party. One of those upscale, candlelit evenings where people drink too much wine and pretend their lives are more polished than they are. He was there with her, his wife. And I was there because I was the best friend. The third wheel. The invisible echo to their glossy, well-manicured life. Only that night he wouldn't stop looking at me. Not in an obvious way. Not with hungry eyes or suggestive grins. No, he watched me like I was a song he hadn't heard in years but still remembered every lyric to. Quiet. Intrigued. Unnerving. And then as the party faded into music and wine and blurred laughter, she leaned in and whispered with a giggle. You know, he has a fantasy. Wants to see me with someone else. Someone I trust. Her eyes flicked to mine, bold and teasing. Someone like you. I thought it was a joke. Flirtation. Something harmless to stir the air. Until I found myself in their penthouse later that night, fingers trembling around a glass of scotch, my dress sticking to my thighs like the room itself was holding its breath. Just pretend, he said, voice low as velvet. You're her. Let's see if I can tell the difference. I should have walked away. I should have laughed again. But instead, I nodded. The rules were simple. I was supposed to play a role. Be her. Act like her. Move like her. Respond the way she would. It was all just a game, they said. But the moment he touched my wrist, just a brush, a whisper of skin, my pulse betrayed me. I wasn't acting. Not anymore. I watched her sit in the corner, legs crossed, sipping wine with a smirk that knew exactly what she was doing. And when he stepped closer, eyes locked on mine, every inch of him radiating heat, I realized something dangerous. I didn't want to pretend. I wanted him to forget the difference. The room felt stretched thin, like the silence between us was about to snap. She watched from the velvet armchair near the fireplace, wine glass poised, mouth curled in a knowing smile. Candlelight flickered over her collarbone, catching the glint of her necklace, the one I'd always admired but never touched. Now I was wearing it. Her perfume still clung to the silk dress she'd lent me, and every time I moved, it reminded me that this wasn't mine. None of it was. Not the dress, not the apartment, not the man now standing so close I could feel his breath just behind my ear. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about lines or consequences. I was thinking about the way his hand hovered at the small of my back. Hesitant, reverent. Like he was waiting for permission he wasn't sure he deserved. You're doing well, she said, swirling her wine lazily, her voice like a ribbon drifting through the air. She even moves like me, doesn't she? He didn't answer. He just looked at me. And I saw it, the hesitation breaking, the curiosity taking over. His eyes scanned my face like he was trying to decode a language only I could speak. My breath caught, not because I was afraid but because I wanted him to keep looking. Tell me something, I said softly. Are you imagining me? Or still imagining her? He didn't speak. But he reached up, gently tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers brushed my cheek, lingering a second too long. It wasn't the touch of a man playing a game anymore. It was the touch of a man who just stepped over the line. I don't know, he finally murmured. Maybe both. Something shifted. I wasn't playing a role, I was becoming her. Or maybe she was becoming me. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the way his eyes darkened when I leaned in just a little closer. The way his jaw flexed like he was holding back more than words. The way she watched, unblinking, like she wanted this. Like she needed to see it. There was a twisted kind of thrill in it. Inhabiting someone else's skin. Feeling desire that wasn't supposed to be mine. And yet, somehow, had always been. My heartbeat pulsed through my fingertips as he stepped around me, slowly, studying me from every angle. I didn't move. I let him look. I wanted him to look. But just as the air grew thick enough to drown in, she stood up. Wait, she said, her voice cutting through the heat. Before you go any further. She walked toward us, her heels clicking softly on the marble, and then leaned into his ear. I couldn't hear what she said, but I saw his reaction. A sharp breath. A pause. A small stunned nod. Then he turned back to me. Eyes darker now, heavier, like something had just shifted. That's when she whispered to me. Just one line, like a match to dry kindling. Would you still do this? If I told you he's not pretending either? Her words echoed through me like a ripple in still water. He's not pretending either. Something in my chest tightened. Not panic, not fear. Something stranger. Like falling slowly but realizing you don't want to stop. His hand hadn't moved. It still hovered near my waist, as if he was afraid touching me would shatter something, or worse, make it real. I could feel the warmth of him. The gravitational pull that had started as suggestion but now tugged at something much deeper. He stepped closer. So close I could smell his cologne. Expensive, faintly woodsy, but softened by the scent of her that still lingered on my borrowed skin. I didn't pull away. I leaned in instinctively. She sat back down, legs crossed, arms resting on the velvet arms of her chair like a queen watching her game unfold. She always watches, he murmured, his voice low. That's part of it. Part of what? I didn't ask, because in that moment I didn't need the whole story. I just needed him. The way he looked at me like he'd been starving in a marriage of perfect smiles and cold sheets, and I was the first warm thing he'd touched in years. I'm not her, I whispered, the words trembling out before I could stop them. He brushed his knuckles down my jaw, light, reverent, maddening. No, he said. You're not. And somehow that made it worse. And better. All at once. The room shifted around us. The light dimmed. Or maybe it was just my eyes slipping shut for half a second. Dizzy with the weight of being wanted this much. The tension between us wasn't playful anymore. It was thick, urgent, unspoken. And then she laughed. Soft. A little cruel. A little sad. You always wanted her, she said, almost to herself. Even before I said it out loud. I turned toward her, blinking. What do you mean? She met my gaze head-on, her expression unreadable. But her voice? Her voice cracked, just slightly around the edges. I saw the way you looked at each other. You both thought I didn't. But I did. The air went still. The game we thought we were playing? It had already started long ago. And she had known all along. I just needed to see it for myself, she added. How far you'd go. How far he would go. I didn't know whether to step back or lean in further. My body said one thing, my conscience another. But my pulse? My pulse was already gone. He looked at me, then at her. Something heavy settled between them. An old wound maybe, or a truth they buried beneath shared bank accounts and Sunday brunches. Then she smiled, small, tired, but honest. Tell her the truth, she said to him. Before this goes any further. He inhaled sharply, as if bracing for impact. I wanted this, he said. But not just tonight. Not just the game. His eyes met mine, dark, exposed. I've imagined you for months. Not her version of you. Just you. My breath caught. And suddenly the rules I thought I understood, the ones that were supposed to keep us safe, disappeared like steam on glass. The room no longer felt like theirs. Or mine. It was something else now, sacred and dangerous, like we'd trespassed into a part of each other we weren't meant to find. He had just said it. Out loud. Clear and bare. I've imagined you. Not her version of you. Just you. And in that breathless moment, I should have felt flattered. Desired. Powerful. But all I felt was seen. Too seen. Because the truth? I had imagined him too. Long before tonight, before the game, before her suggestion curled around me like smoke, there were moments. Fleeting glances. Accidental touches. Silences that stretched too long. Laughs that lingered. I buried them. Told myself I was loyal. That I'd never crossed that line. But he hadn't just seen me. He'd seen the version of me I tried to hide. And now so had she. She uncrossed her legs slowly, standing again. But this time she didn't come toward us. She walked to the window, her back to us, eyes fixed on the skyline. I need to tell you something, she said. Both of you. The air tightened like it knew what was coming before we did. This wasn't just his fantasy, she said. It was mine too. I blinked, breath catching. She turned, face unreadable but voice steady. I've watched you, she said, eyes on me now. The way you move. The way you light up around him. The way you dim around other men. You think no one sees it, but I did. I always have. She stepped closer again. Not toward him this time, but toward me. I didn't bring you here to watch him want you, she whispered. I brought you here because I wanted to know what it would feel like to see him touch you. and know that I wasn't losing anything. My chest rose slowly like my body was trying to make room for a truth I hadn't considered. I thought maybe it would be freeing, she said. But now that it's happening. She trailed off, her eyes softening. It's not about watching anymore. It's about choosing. I didn't understand. Not at first. But then her hand brushed mine. A single touch. No pressure. Just contact. And the room swayed. Oh. The fantasy wasn't just him watching me. Or her watching us. It was more complicated, layered, intimate, messy. The fantasy was all of us. A triangle of desire and memory and buried hunger. Stretching in directions we hadn't dared name. Until now. He looked at her, really looked, and something in his eyes broke open. You want her, he said, voice low, not accusing. Just stunned. She didn't deny it. I don't know what I want, she said. But I know I want this moment to mean something. Silence fell. Charged. Electric. I stood between them, no longer a guest. No longer a stand-in. Just me. Wanted. Chosen. At the center of something wild and real. The game was over. But something else had just begun. It's strange how one night can unravel everything you thought you knew about yourself. I stood there, between the man who used to be off-limits, and the woman I once thought of as just a friend, and neither of them looked at me like I was a mistake. Not anymore. She was still close. Too close. The space between us felt charged, like static before a summer storm. Her fingers lingered near mine from that soft brush, and I couldn't stop remembering the look in her eyes when she said she'd watched me. Not just tonight. Always. You don't have to be afraid, she said gently. You've always been in this story. You just didn't know it. I should have pulled back. Should have questioned what any of this meant. But my body had already made the choice. I leaned in, not toward him this time, but toward her. She didn't hesitate. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, soft, certain, and I felt the warmth of her breath just before her lips nearly touched mine. Not a kiss, not yet. Just the nearness of it. A whisper away. My entire body tightened with anticipation. I wanted to know, she breathed, what it would feel like to touch the person he dreams about. Her voice made my skin burn. And when her lips finally met mine, soft, slow, exploratory, something inside me collapsed. Not from guilt. From release. It wasn't about betrayal anymore. Or confusion. It was about being seen. Desired. Held. I forgot about the rules. I forgot about pretending. She kissed me like I was the missing piece. Not the threat, not the fantasy, but the secret they'd both carried in different ways. Behind us, he didn't move. He watched. But not with jealousy or possession. With something deeper. Reverence. Like he was witnessing something sacred unfold. I didn't know, I whispered as she pulled back just an inch, that you felt this. She smiled, eyes searching mine. I didn't either. Until I saw you become her. And I realized I didn't want her back. I wanted you. The air between us pulsed. My heart was beating so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. Then he stepped forward. I want both of you, he said, voice thick, low, almost broken. Not as a game. Not tonight. For real. I froze. This wasn't a fantasy anymore. It was a proposition. Not for lust, but for something more dangerous. Intimacy. Emotional gravity. A possibility none of us were ready to name, but all three of us were starting to feel. This night had started with make-believe. But the way she touched me, the way he looked at us, none of that was pretend. We were on the edge of something real. And the scariest part? I didn't want to stop it. There's a moment, right before something changes your life, when everything goes still. Like time is waiting to see if you'll step forward or run. That was the moment we were in. Her hand still rested against my skin. His breath hovered behind me. I was held in the gravity of both of them, like I belonged not to one, but to the space between them. It didn't feel like trespassing anymore. Felt like surrender. And so we surrendered. It didn't happen all at once. There was no rush. No chaos. Just slow, deliberate unraveling. A kind of quiet urgency that lived in every glance, every inhale, every brush of fingertips. He moved behind me, close enough that his chest touched my back when I leaned ever so slightly. She was in front of me, eyes soft, inviting. Not demanding anything, just waiting. We were silent, but the silence said everything. I felt her hands on the silk of the dress she'd given me, the dress that had once been hers, but now fit like it had always been meant for me. She undid the zipper with a kind of reverence, not rushing, just discovering. Behind me, he exhaled slowly, like the sound of letting go. As the fabric slid from my shoulders, I didn't feel exposed. I felt offered. They didn't devour me. They unwrapped me, like something fragile, something sacred. Her mouth pressed against my collarbone, and my breath caught. His hands framed my hips, steady but full of tension, like he was holding back an entire storm. I couldn't think. I didn't need to. There was no shame, no fear, only sensation, warmth, and a deep, undeniable yes echoing through every inch of my skin. She kissed the side of my neck. Not possessive, not claiming, just curious. And when I turned to him, our eyes locked in a way that made time blur again. I don't know what this means, I whispered, trembling. He leaned in, forehead against mine, voice quiet but sure. It means something already. We just haven't named it. She joined us, resting her head against my shoulder. The three of us stood there. A strange, intimate sculpture, connected by something unspoken. This wasn't about rebellion anymore. Or lust. It wasn't about who belonged to whom. It was about freedom. About feeling known completely and still being wanted. And as the night unfolded in slow motion, every touch, every breath, every soft sound layered into something I hadn't expected to feel. Peace. I had always thought desire was something sharp, dangerous. But this was warm. And when we finally lay tangled together, bodies curved, hands clasped, hearts unguarded, I realized the real intimacy wasn't in the touch. It was in the truth we'd let ourselves tell. Without words. Without shame. Without pretending. The morning light felt unreal, soft, almost golden. Like it knew what we'd done and had decided to forgive us. I woke between them. Her hand still curled gently around mine. His breath slow and steady behind me. No words yet. Just warmth. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask for explanation. I laid there, eyes open, letting the memories roll over me like waves. The touch of their hands. The way her lips had lingered like a question. The way he'd looked at me like I was no longer something he wanted to resist. What surprised me most wasn't the guilt I expected to feel, but the absence of it. Instead there was calm. An eerie, soul-deep stillness. Like I had stepped into a version of myself that had always been waiting for permission. Eventually she stirred. Her hair a mess, mascara faint under her eyes, but still beautiful. Human. Real. "You okay?" she whispered, her voice barely there. I nodded. "Are you?" She smiled. A little sad. A little content. "I think so. I don't regret it." Neither did I. He sat up soon after, silent but not distant. The three of us shared a kind of awkward grace, not avoiding what had happened, but not rushing to define it either. And maybe that's what made it beautiful. Because it wasn't a performance. It wasn't possession. It wasn't about breaking something just to feel alive. It was about permission to feel, to want, to blur lines that had always felt too sharp. We talked. Quietly. Not about what it meant long-term, not yet, but about how we felt. What we discovered. What scared us, and what didn't. She said something I'll never forget. "I used to think love meant being everything for one person. Now I think it means letting them find the parts of themselves they were too afraid to show." I left that morning with no promises. No labels. But I left with something more important. A version of myself I hadn't met before. One who wasn't afraid of the shadows. Who knew what she wanted. Who wasn't just the third wheel or the substitute or the echo of someone else. I was chosen. Not instead of someone else, but as myself. And whatever came next, I'd carry that with me. If you made it to the end of this story, I want to know what you felt. Would you have said yes? Would you have trusted them? Would you have trusted yourself? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell if you want more stories that explore the messy, beautiful places we don't always talk about. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and never be afraid to want more.